In this video, we talk to Bill Spohn, president and owner of TruTechTools.com, a leading distributor of tools and test instruments for the building industry. We discuss ventilation, filtration, and humidity control, which are all extremely important aspects for properly built homes. I'm Casey Gray, the founder of The Conscious Builder, and on this channel, we help you build and live more consciously. If you're new here, go ahead and click that subscribe button, and don't forget to check out the links in the description below. Before we get into today's video, I would like to share a killer deal that I worked with MAZUMAGO for all the business owners out there. MAZUMAGO has saved us a ton of time and money in getting payments from clients. Being a general contractor, we often send out invoices that are well over the usual e-transfer limits that clients have. We also accepted credit cards in the past that cost us thousands of dollars in fees each month. Essentially, what MAZUMAGO allows you to do is have your clients send electronic payments directly to your bank for no fees to your clients and minimal fees to you. I don't think we've paid more than $130 in 1 month, and I can tell you that the time we have saved is well over that amount each month. If you want to get a $250 credit to test this out for your business, head to mazumago.com/TCB. The link is in the video description below, and now on to the video. Now, one thing I'd love to touch on, this will flow into that, is indoor air quality. Do you have tools that will measure indoor air quality?
Yeah, and that's kind of funny because I've been working in that area for like 25 years, and the definition is not it's not like measuring a foot or a volume. Indoor air quality is a whole list of parameters, and some of it's driven by what you can measure, and then it's also driven by what you should measure. And sometimes things you should measure are too hard to measure and don't get measured. And sometimes things you can't measure don't provide enough information to be useful. So, I mean, the most basic things that I think of now for indoor air quality is sort of like, what can you do about it? If you can measure it, then perhaps, and you see it's going out of bounds, then you want to provide some kind of solution to fix it. And the three major ones that I can think of that are the most significant ones are ventilation, filtration, and humidity control, either adding humidity, but in most cases, subtracting humidity, dehumidification. So those are sort of and colleagues of mine will say that's the holy trinity of IAQs: ventilation, filtration, and humidity control.
And how would you measure those three things? Are those all measured separately through different devices, or is this something that somebody can do on their own in their own house to figure out what their air quality is?
Sure. There's various levels, and we sell at TruTechTools a bunch of IAQ monitors. Some of them, like for ventilation, I'll just hit the parameters. So for ventilation, a good representative parameter is CO2, because we all exhale about 4.5% CO2 by volume. And if there's no fresh air coming into the structure, then that will eventually build up. And that can be used as a surrogate indicator of ventilation quality. So when CO2 starts to rise, in fact, I have a system in my house where when it gets above 800 ppm CO2, my ERV runs. And it runs until it drops it down by about 100 ppm. And then if it drifts back up, it'll run again. So it's a smart system that keeps the fresh air, the right amount of fresh air in the house. So that's one, CO2 and ventilation. Second one is filtration. That would be measuring particulates. There's lots of monitors out there now, some that are $100, $200, $300, and all the way up to thousands to measure more specifically. But a lot of them will give you a really good idea if particulates are being emitted by different things in the home, either by, perhaps they're being entrained with house leakage, or they're being generated by cooking, or you're aspirating in maybe diesel particles or something from a combustion source. And then humidity control is pretty straightforward. There's a lot of temperature and humidity probes and meters and things out there that do controls that can provide inputs to devices.
Now, to control each one of these things? Is there something that people can do to improve these items with stuff that's already in their home? Or are we talking about like ventilation, for example, is ERV, like you mentioned, or HRV, depending on where you live. But what can people do if they realize that the ventilation, for example, isn't very good in their house?
Well, it would be just that. You would have to you have to bring in fresh air somehow through either ERV, HRV, but there's also companies that make timers for bath fans, such that you can set a bath fan to a level that will cycle periodically to exhaust air. So that's called an exhaust only strategy. There's some systems that provide, bring air into the structure. So that would be another strategy for that. So for ventilation, basically you have to bring air in and out of the structure. That would be the way to control it.
Yeah, when you do something like a bathroom fan, like the houses that we build, we avoid any holes through the air barrier ultimately, and any fans that aren't the ERV. We're always doing ERVs where we are. A bathroom fan, if you run that, although it might help with ventilating the CO2, could that hurt the particulates? The filtration aspect of it, if it's sucking in air through all the leaky parts of your house?
Well, then there's sort of like, there's all layers like this. Balanced ventilation would then have a way of controlling. And there's a lot of good resources out there and that I've learned from that talks about, with a house, you're trying to get everything under the best control you can. And that would include like hole control, like you said, just like you said, minimizing the penetrations, but also providing balanced ventilation. That would be the ultimate solution. And there's simpler and more complex ways of providing balanced ventilation, such that you bring the air in that you're exhausting out so that you don't change the pressure inside the house significantly. That's an important factor you mentioned.
Yeah. And for humidity, what's a good level that we should be keeping our homes at? I'm assuming too high is not good, too low is not good either.
That's correct. Yeah.
So what should we be aiming for?
Generally speaking, it's 40 to 55%. Some people will go to even 60% for health reasons. I do a podcast too, and I've interviewed a couple people that talk about that in detail. So if listeners are interested, it's okay to mention my podcast.
Absolutely. Mention everything that you're doing.
Building HVAC Science. And that's just one word. You can type that in .com, and you can see some interviews that I've done with people talking about humidity. But generally speaking, 40 to 55%, most people would find acceptable. And the interesting thing is, if the humidity is kept low, usually people can tolerate higher temperatures because of the physiological effects of evaporative cooling off your skin. Which means that sometimes humidity control is a better way of making people comfortable rather than running air conditioning to cool the air and maybe not dehumidify it as much.
Yeah, it's a really good point. Everything, it comes down to comfort at the end of the day, right? So
yeah.
If you're comfortable in the home, then that'll actually save on your electricity or your heating bills, whatever it may be.
And you'll just want to live in the space. You'll just feel good about living in your shelter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very true. Glad you tuned in until the end. We have lots more interviews scheduled, so be sure to subscribe and hit that bell button so you get all the notifications when they release. If you want to continue learning more about high performance homes, you can check out this past interview that I did with Natalie Leonard on passive houses. Until next time, I'm Casey Gray, and remember to live consciously.